Hey there, Jeff Manchester, Manchester Music. Welcome. I've been getting back into composing in a big way because I've been lucky enough to score a documentary series, which has been in continuous kind of edit and capture mode as these things are. And especially with the pandemic, it's been taking a while, which is great for me because I've got stuff on the side too, and I can write a little bit more slowly. But I feel like I've been writing really, really slowly because I've just found it really difficult to get back into the maintenance and mindset of actually writing a piece of music from start to finish. Even though I did a lot of it, have done a lot of it, I've been lucky enough to be asked to do it a lot. My return to it has been a little complicated. I think one of the things that complicates it for me is that I really do lack a lot of important skills. One of them is the ability to read music very well. I don't have a technical, foundational, theoretical understanding of arranging, orchestration, those kind of things. I kind of improvise, and if I'm going in a good direction, I'll record and then build on that, and then build on that, and then build on that, and then mix it into something that hopefully somebody wants. But I don't have, the circle of fifths kind of planted into my head and all this theoretical knowledge and stuff like that that helps me know what might be a good idea, what might be a bad idea, how fast, how slow, what chord progression should come next, if I should do a change of key. And if I'm being honest, I really don't have the time to go back in and redo all that important education that I would need in order to be a better composer in that sense. I've kind of gotten away with just doing things my way for a long time, but now that I'm getting back into composing, I'm really feeling that kind of writer's block, and all of my lack of technical ability has, I think, compounded this writer's block. And it's made me wonder, should composing be easier? Or I guess another way to ask the question is, should composing be this hard and stay this hard? Now, we all know the mindset of the emergent composer, and that's, well, I'm not a great composer now, but after I buy this sample library, I will be, right? Because that new sample library holds the promise of inspiration at one touch, right? And you see this in the marketing copy from companies like Spitfire. It's inspirational or inspiration driving. We know that feeling, right? You hit the keyboard with a new sample library and you hear something new, or you play a chord and a new pattern emerges, and that sends you off in the direction of a new idea. And the sample library is so new and unique that it sustains you as you go and pursue that idea and flesh it out into something real. But I'm not sure that, hit one key and you'll be inspired thing really works, because even after you are inspired, that next move and the move after that and the move after that, that's where the difficulty comes in. And that's where I find there isn't really something that exists in the space of composers to assist them in pursuing that inspiration and taking it all the way down to a finished cue. I started to think about this, and I noticed that in other aspects of the music industry, repair, mixing, mastering, even DJing, there exist assistive technologies to help you do something faster, smarter, better, whatever. And I think it's important to take a minute just to kind of describe the landscape around us and how far these different domains have come thanks to assistive technology. Take mixing, for example. Now, in mixing, you've got stuff like the EQ freeze function in FabFilter, or EQ learn in Neutron. Even Soothe by OX Sound is able to identify areas of sonic importance that might be causing resonance and just dynamically suppress them throughout the course of an entire audio event. And experts and beginners alike have really embraced this kind of assistive technology. Let's say you don't know how to DS something as a mixer, and this is to get rid of strong consonants, known as sometimes sibilants in a record. Well, you've got in FabFilter this cool kind of heat map on their de-esser that shows you where the de-essing is occurring according to the tool. And in a tool called Nectar by Isotope, you can use the vocal assistant and it'll actually identify where the sibilance is occurring and set the parameters up for you so that all you have to do is kind of check and make sure it sounds good to you and it's suppressing it enough. You can tweak it or just leave it alone and keep moving. On the repair side, there's Repair Assistant in Isotope RX, which listens to your audio for pops, clicks, hums, stuff like that. And then we'll, give you a couple different repair scenarios that you can choose from to be like, oh, this sounds great. Awesome. Denoise, declicked, all the rest of it. Even in tuning, tools like Melodyne have tuning macros that go in, identify the key of the track, and then with one kind of tuning macro, you can snap all the notes to the grid, and it usually sounds pretty darn good. Or you can take mastering, for example. There's tools like Master Assistant from Ozone, another iZotope tool. There's also Lander, which allows you to just upload your track, and then the machine takes over and gives you something that's fully mastered. Going back to the mixing stuff, you might think, well, Jeff, getting rid of resonance or sibilance or plosives, things like that, those are all objective things that we are identifying as problematic and wrong. Those aren't really creative things where we're choosing a reverb or picking a tone or a vibe. Well, I would argue that in some cases, the tools are assisting with the vibe aspect. Take iZotope's Neutron, which has in its track enhance feature a couple different vibe options, like I think it's like modern or vintage or dark or lo-fi or whatever. So there are some kind of creatively assistive tools that are out there for mix engineers. It's not all about objective stuff like clicks, pops, plosives, that sort of thing that we have assistive technology to help us with. Now, some may argue that the ability for us to use either assistive technology or just visual technology to see and remove all these problems has led to a uniformity of sound, something kind of boring. Everyone or everything sounds the same. And, they might have a bit of a point. If I go back and listen to music from the 60s and 70s, especially folk music, especially when you have headphones on, listening to like Bob Dylan or one of these people, you can really hear, mouth clicks. Sometimes you can hear plosives. Now, some might argue that that is like part of the intimacy of the performance. We might want a mouth click in there. We might want some essiness. Perhaps it adds to aggression or something like that. I'm not really sure. But certainly the tools that we have made that kind of stuff undesirable. And you're really not going to hear a lot of clicks or pops or plosives or even untuned notes in music today. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. My fiance was telling me this example of makeup. Everyone wears makeup now, and it's not a problem if you don't have it on, but if you're the only one not wearing makeup, you're probably going to stand out and think, wow, I should probably put some makeup on because I don't want to be the only one not, wearing it, and people might make a judgment about me. So things do kind of level out the more we introduce new kind of standards for what we think is good or good sounding or anything like that. So we've established that in mixing and mastering, it's not just the objective, I have to fix this problem stuff that has assistive support behind it through technology. We also have creative stuff that allows you to go for a vibe or a tone, and then saturation and other tools will kick in to support that sonic kind of intention that you, the user, has. But what about DJing? There's actually a really interesting article from a writer at the Resident Advisor website, and the article I think is called DJing shouldn't be easy. And you should go read it because it's actually really good. But one of the main arguments that this writer has is that the ability to automatically sync up the two tracks, making beat matching, which is this thing DJs used to have to do by ear, where you listen to a track and identify its downbeat, and then you use your little headphone to see where the next downbeat is on the next track, and you kind of listen and then crossfade, and hopefully you've timed things such that, it just sounds like you're playing two tracks at the same time with the same downbeat. They argue that kind of synchronicity, thanks to largely, DSP and the ability to view a waveform and then quantize that and then, have it map up with another waveform, that in and of itself has made DJs a little bit lazy. And they say that is not a good thing. Now, they also say that because of beat matching and the ability to add like 4 tracks together at the same time and just not worry about beat matching anymore, that's actually opened up a lot of creative possibilities. And you have DJs who are known for just melting 6 or 7 different worlds together because everything is synced up, and now we have new creative possibilities where we don't have to worry about matching anymore. We can just go to someplace totally new. And I think that's important too. The technology has enabled a kind of new way of thinking about DJing and performances. But this writer also says that when listening to a DJ set, sometimes hearing that the beats are going a little bit in and out of tempo, in other words, we don't have an auto sync feature, the DJ is just beat matching from, from hand or from ear or whatever. That is exciting to them as an attendee of a performance, because they can hear that things are live and all that stuff. I think it's an interesting argument, but not one that I think anyone really thinks about. Like when they go to watch a show, they're not really listening for, is this person, matching? They just want to get a great performance and have a really great night. And the only people that are really going to care about whether or not auto-syncing stuff is getting used is probably people like the writer that think about this stuff and care about it. Most people just go and expect a great performance. And I would argue that in mixing and mastering, there really isn't any tolerability for mistakes. A mouth click, a pop, a plosive, sibilance that isn't taken care of, all that stuff distracts from the ability to get lost in a piece of audio. And so there really isn't tolerance for mistakes, and I don't think people welcome mistakes in the same way that this writer welcomes a little bit of kind of wooziness and wobbliness on the part of a DJ in a live performance setting. Now, I know we started talking about composing, and I want to get back there now, but I thought I'd just talk about the landscape of assistive technology and where it stands now. And isn't it interesting that after all those things that I mentioned, there really isn't any assistive technology for composers? I don't know why that is. Now, don't get me wrong. Sample libraries have come a really long way. One of those, ways is just in realism. If you listen to sample libraries that came out 20 years ago, they sounded not that good, and to the point where I don't think people really use them or use them enthusiastically, and maybe they just use them to mock things up before giving them off to a real orchestra to write. But now you can get away with a lot of realism and have, clients that are satisfied and think that, 60 or 70 people playing, acoustic instruments performed it, but really it was just you. And that's thanks to breakthroughs in sampling technology. The same is true a little bit of plugins. Plugins were always trying to emulate, in a mixing sense, the hardware like the LA2A or Fairchild or something like that. Now, I think even the pros, in a blindfold test couldn't really tell the difference between the two because they've just gotten that good. So there have been advancements made. And I also want to call out the fact that some technologies in sample libraries is it's pretty advanced now. You've got stuff like Sonokinetic, which make underwriting, just giving you a kind of base of either a rhythmic component or an ostinato or something. It sounds real. It's awesome. It's a good canvas for you to then kind of take over with some, melody or legato or whatever on top of that. There's stuff like Action Strings, which is a little bit like Sonokinetic in that it's basically these loops that can stretch across different areas of the keyboard and sound good, but it just gives you that kind of like underwriting, underscoring thing. And now we're seeing it with Arcus. And there's another one, it's a collaboration between Contact or Native and Orchestral Tools, which again just gives you these really interesting palettes of sound that loop and repeat that you can use as a baseline for further composing. So there have been some really interesting moves made to help composers, but not, I think, on the same level as we've seen with repair, mixing, mastering, and DJing. And I should also mention that Digital Performer, and I think most DAWs have this now, introduced a really cool little feature where it'll time the downbeat of the track's tempo along with significant moments in the video if you plug in the right data. I always thought that was kind of cool, and I learned about it in audio engineering school. So what am I looking for? Well, I guess in a way, I'm looking for something that can know what I'm going for. What if there was a tool where if I told it, I want a Zimmer style track or I want a Reznor style track, and then it took that into account with some references that I fed it, and then gave me just a starting point. It set the table with a BPM, a couple of cool sounds, maybe a couple of MIDI chords just to start, and then said, okay, you take it from here. Or what if there was something where I was composing and then I got into a bit of a rut and I didn't really know what to do next, and it said, okay, I know what you're going for. I know the BPM, the key, everything. Here's a couple of ideas to get you over the hump. Here's an idea for a new chord progression. Here's 20 new chord progressions that will sound cool based on what you've done. And they vary in terms of like, they will really work or they will take you kind of outside and over the border of what you've done according to the key. Or Here's a really interesting opportunity for a key change based on everything that we've seen. Maybe try this out. Just something to kind of get me over that hump or get me started with inspirational or directional assistance. I don't know why something like this hasn't already been invented. I'm assuming it's because it's really, really difficult to do. Creative intent is hard to kind of predict and model with a computer. Now, I have seen some technologies like I think Captain Chord and stuff like this, which will give you some inspirational MIDI stuff, but that seems to me to be a bit more focused on the EDM crowd that need loopable, repetitive chord progressions that exist, in like a 4-bar kind of structure. What I'm looking for is something more like, a canvas with a couple of paints according to the artist you want to kind of try to look like. And here's a kind of foundation. Now you go and get started. Now you're over the hump. I certainly don't want to suggest that I want something to write the entire thing for me and then all I do is maybe add reverb or something like that. I don't think any of us want something like that. But right now, I think this notion of, inspiration happens at the moment you hit the key and then you'll just kind of know what to do next. I don't know how much I really believe that anymore. And I don't want to speak for more advanced composers, but I'm sure even the pros would like something, they're composing, they've been working at it for like 2 weeks, something to just come in and go, hey, I see what you're doing. Maybe try this. Just like an assistant that goes, I've been looking over your shoulder. This could be kind of cool. Think predictive text like in Google, but for composers. So anyway, why don't these innovations exist? I'm guessing it's because it's really hard, and I'm also guessing it's because we don't have a groundswell of people going, we want these new features. I mean, if you look at all the stuff that I mentioned, repair, assistant, and all that stuff, I don't think those things came about because you had people writing into companies going, why haven't you made this? It's because we realized after some experimentation and research, we can do this cool little thing. Why don't we build it in and then kind of tell people this is going to save you time. This is an objectively annoying thing that you have to do all the time. And now we have technology that can help focus you on the creative aspect of this work and not the taming sibilance aspect. So I guess there's 3 main questions we have to ask. Can composing be made easier? Will composing be made easier? And the most important question I think is, should composing be made easier? So can composing be made easier? The first question, which let me frame this. By made easier, I mean inspirational and directional assistance. Can it be made easier? Well, I'm assuming if it could have been, it would have been by now. And because I don't see anything there on the market, I'm assuming we can't make it any easier. Second question, will composing be made easier? Well, I really hope so. I really think that we should welcome people who want to be creative, but maybe didn't go to school for 10 years to learn how to do all this stuff, but they have ideas in their head and they want to get them out there and get some help to kind of, make that demo, that cue in their head a reality. So I hope, that we will make composing a little bit easier on that sense. Now, the last question, should we make composing easier? I mean, I think this is a really tough one because you might have some people that think, human creativity, inspiration, these are not things that we should allow computers to help us with. Or, I don't think, and this is another hypothetical person arguing now, I don't think you should be allowed to get assistance. You should do what I did. You should go to school. You should learn. You should apprentice and shadow and all that stuff, and maybe even like ghostwrite for people, and then kind of do your thing. I don't know how I feel about either of those arguments, but I'll go back to, will composing be made easier? I mean, I hope so. I think it should be made easier because I think the more music we have out there, just the better at a very baseline level. The more people we have creating, the more people we have putting stuff out there, the world is just a better place. I'd rather make more music than make more, pick whatever else export you want. And if there's technology to help people do that, I think we should really welcome it and not look down on which path someone took to write something. Getting back to the example of the DJ who sits there and goes, I'm really happy that this performer, I can hear the beat, matching moving out. I feel like I'm watching something live and invigorating. When people listen to a piece of music, I don't think anyone really sits there and thinks, I hope I hear a mistake because that'll tell me that this person knows what they're doing, or I hope I hear some, whatever it is. People just want to be immersed in a story, or immersed in a song, or immersed in a piece of media. It doesn't really matter, if we have the hints that something is awry and that maybe this was composed by someone using assistive technology. So, I think the answer is, can it be made easier? Probably not, but I hope it will. Should it be made easier? Yeah. Will? I hope so. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I know this is kind of a complicated, rambly issue, so there's no real easy way for me to just go and talk about this stuff. But I'm wondering what you think, as always. Is there something out there that assists you in composing that exists in a piece of software that I should know about? Or do you have strong feelings about those 3 questions that I asked? Let me know in the comments. Again, I read everything, react to everything. It's vodcastpodcaster@gmail.com and Twitter @JeffManch. Those are places I can be found. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.